Welcome back. My name is Ungar-Sargon, and I just voted against Donald J. Trump for the second time in 4 years. Back in 2016, I was voting against a candidate who seemed profoundly unqualified and had demonstrated a negligent disregard for basic decency in his campaign. To my lights, the multiple credible allegations of sexual assault, the failure to condemn white nationalists, and the lying on a scale never before seen in American politics were all obvious disqualifying factors. I was also excited to vote for Hillary Clinton, who would have been the first female president in the history of the United States, even though I had significant disagreements with her on a number of policy issues. The Trump administration has been worse than I ever could have imagined. Trump has empowered the darkest elements in our society, used the White House to stoke cultural, religious, and racial divisions, brought unprecedented levels of corruption to Washington, repealed essential climate regulations, deliberately tore children away from the arms of their parents, led an all-out assault on our system of asylum, appointed extremist judges to the highest courts in the land, and is now responsible for a catastrophic response to the coronavirus, the ineptitude of which has led to hundreds of thousands of Americans dying, millions becoming seriously ill, and tens of millions losing their jobs. I continue to believe, as I did in 2016, that Donald Trump has disqualifying character flaws, but I also now think that he constitutes a clear and present danger to our democracy. As it happens, we have a veritable diary of Trump's thoughts for the past 4 years, courtesy of his relentless Twitter feed, and what emerges from this text record is the portrait of a malignant narcissist who bullies those he perceives to be weak, sucks up to those he sees as strong, and refuses to condemn odious groups who say nice things about him. Liberal democracy is not a natural state of affairs. It's been the exception rather than the rule throughout most of human history, and it rests on a series of unspoken agreements and norms that we as a society agree to. It's an incredibly fragile system, and there are many ways in which it can fail, one of which is if enough people start to see it as nothing more than a means to an ideologically defined political end. The common denominator that unites all Trump supporters across the spectrum, be they evangelical Christians in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Orthodox Jews in Borough Park, New York, or Cozy Bear operatives in St. Petersburg, Russia, is the belief that politics are 100% transactional. The Republican Party is a strong example here. They saw Trump for what he was in 2016, but at a certain point, they decided to cut a deal with him. They would swallow every last odious part of his character and the subsequent fallout for the country in exchange for tax cuts and judges. The tricky thing here is that on the surface, this can just appear to be hard-nosed politics. What was the Republican talking point repeated by multiple senators who rushed a third Supreme Court appointment through in the final weeks before this election? That if the shoe were on the other foot and Democrats had their hand, they would have played it exactly the same way. Only the truth is that they wouldn't have, because the Democrats still believe in the system and still have shame, an emotion that Donald Trump seems to have beaten out of the GOP. This is where some of the critiques from the left lose me. When I hear that Republicans and Democrats are basically the same in that they both represent the interests of the corporate class, it's not that this analysis is wrong exactly so much as it flattens out a really important fact about our politics. There is, at this moment, a fundamental difference between Republicans and Democrats. One side sees the politics of our democracy as so many levers to be pulled to achieve a set of narrowly defined political outcomes, and the other side sees them as having intrinsic value in perpetuating our way of life. To be clear, I'm not trying to argue that our system of government is great. American democracy has been in deep trouble for a very long time. Gerrymandering, voter suppression, money in politics, the Electoral College. I mean, each one of these anti-democratic norms that we just live with could justify hours of analysis on their own. We need deep, systemic reform to get to a place where the people's will is really represented in our politics. But when politics is just about getting your way, these bugs can start to look like features. Redraw a district here, and we can get a more favorable balance in the state legislature. Throw out half the votes there, and candidates don't have to campaign in that state. Pack the Supreme Court, and you can overturn established law in this country. Look, I'm under no illusions about the battles ahead. The systemic issues that we face as a nation will continue no matter who gets elected next week. But there's a 5-alarm fire that's going on right now, and there's really only one political party in our two-party system that even believes it's the government's job to put it out. Vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and I'll be there with you after the election to hold them accountable and rebuild our nation.